Okay. Actually, I have my glasses right here just in case I need them. There. Okay, I'm here. Hey, Chris. Good to see you, my friend. I'm a little bit late and fashionably early and fashionably late. Hey, Eric. Good to see you both. Good to see you as well, Keith. This is kind of a spontaneous live cast, like most of them. So my apologies if anyone comes in late or the next day or whatnot. I know some people watch my live casts later, but generally when I make a live cast, it's because I'm feeling spontaneous. The circumstances surrounding where I'm at that time makes me want to speak for some reason. Today, I've had an interesting week. Today I went down to see a friend of mine. It's like a really good friend of mine's brother, who is also a friend of mine, but we weren't as close as my friend and I are. And he has brain cancer and just found out, months ago. And now he's in chemotherapy. He's got this thing on his head. We all went out to a steakhouse to eat. And, it was a great experience, a great reminder. We've been down there a couple times. He lives down in Eugene. And, excuse me, clear my throat here. And going down and visiting a friend who is terminally ill and really isn't given more than a year to live, which I'm not saying I believe that, because I believe in the strength of people to overcome illness. I believe in the power of the mind. But I also realize that each individual, no matter how much you fight and how much you think you have strength, you're still faced with the same adversity and the same questioning of yourself. And so this illusion we have that people, can overcome things just by the power of the mind is a little bit overstated, but it is very important to remember that we do have a lot of control over our own health. And I think that being surrounded by people you love is important. And just showing support to people around you who might be suffering. But that's not what today's topic is about. Today's topic, you ready? Well, I would imagine by the title, if you clicked on it, it's about growing up. I'll be 48 this year. And sometimes I think about talking about my life and the things that I've dealt with in my own personal life. And I find myself kind of short of words. I don't have a very exciting life. I haven't been through a whole lot in my own endeavors. But, when you look back on it all, you realize we've all faced a lot of adversity. We've all faced a lot of issues. And growing up, I suppose that's a very subjective term. It's, to some people, they believe that once you reach a certain age, you have attained some sort of an awareness that, you can only get from, becoming a certain age. It's almost like some people believe that, in their minds when they're young, that it's almost like a club. Like once you're in the adult club, you figure things out. At least that's how, many people were taught when they were younger in the old times. These days, most kids think they know everything. But I thought that if I talked about my own life and my own circumstance and where I came from, it would not just to help others or to tell people about my life, but rather hoping that opening up a dialogue and talking about my life will help me remember things that are important. The earliest memory I have is getting stung by a bee in my backyard. Now, if I recall, off the top of my head, I remember living in this house on a place called Oatfield Road in Milwaukee, Oregon, up until I was about 9. And we lived in this house, and it was, just your average ranch-style house with a brick facade on the side. And we had a pretty big backyard and a shed. I remember my dad had a compost pile. And I remember running in the backyard one day and just running back crying because I got stung by a bee. You remember those things. And other than that memory, there's a couple other ones. Talking to the old lady that was the neighbor. Um, like I said, my dad's compost pile. And I also remember when Mount St. Helens blew. I was 5 years old, and I remember my dad was having to hose and sweep down the whole house and everything because everything got covered with ash in the Portland area. Um, and then I remember when I was getting a little older, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and the neighbor kid, and he was about 11 or 12. He was older than me. And so, of course, he was a horrible influence. He was the only kid I knew because he lived across the road. And he gave me a bunch of firecrackers. And I remember lighting them in my garage and blowing them up when my parents were gone. And I'll never forget, you know, lighting a short fused firecracker, then a black cat, then attempting to put it behind my back and then throw it. And not only is that not very good for your hearing, but let's just say that my finger was numb for the rest of the day, and I felt pretty stupid about it. But you know what? I learned a lesson. Around the same time at that house, a few years back, I remember sticking my finger in a light socket where there was no bulb in. And I learned a lesson there too. These are the things that as kids grow up, they figure out. The same kid across the street convinced me that breaking all of my toys would be cool. And so we grabbed hammers and rocks and broke all of my toys. This kid was an asshole. And I remember having a rock fight. He wanted to have a rock fight. So we each took, yeah, this is what we did in the 80s for fun. We each took a bucket of rocks, except for, of course, he was older, so he was smart enough to say, okay, you go on the roof and I'll be on the ground. So naturally, it was easier for him to hit me in the head, and he did. And I got a huge welt and almost got knocked out off the roof and had to go home. And you think back to the stupid shit you did when you were a kid, and it's laughable. It's funny to me. I don't know. And that was all before I was 9 years old, right? See, this is what I'm talking about. You start opening up and talking about shit. You start remembering things that you forgot. I remember when my parents removed the above ground swimming pool we had there, and there was a big mud pit, so we mud wrestled. Had some good times, and then we moved into this apartment down the street. And there were these two black kids. I can't remember their name. Alfonso. I remember Alfonso. I'll never forget his name. And I can't remember his brother's name. But these guys were the worst. They were like a few years older than my brother and I, and they would pick on us. They'd steal our GI Joe guys. We wanted to get Castle Grayskull and stuff. And I remember one of the kids ended up getting this GI Joe tank that like everybody wanted, and but they would like harass the other kids in the apartment complex and take our shit. And it was a generally shitty experience, and I don't remember much about that time from about 9 to 10. But I remember that. I remember the bully kids in the neighborhood. I also remember the funniest thing. I remember my parents left town for a night, and I had been in a three-wheeler accident. This was back when three-wheelers were actually like legal, let's say. And somebody let me use one. My dad took me out, and I was in Bakersfield, California. I took out this three-wheeler, and I cruised up over this berm. I wasn't experienced on it. I went to hit the brake, and I hit the gas instead, and went straight into a barbed wire fence. Totally fucked up my leg. I have a scar like that long, where it was completely cut open, burned the back of my leg on the muffler. Pretty lame experience. So I came home. I had all these stitches. I couldn't really move. My parents wanted to go out on a date, and they left my brother and I there alone. So we're flipping through the channels, not much to choose from, but all of a sudden we found American Werewolf in London. And if you haven't seen that movie, I mean, it's an older movie. It might not seem that scary by today's standards, but honestly, I think some of the older movies are much scarier than what you find today. It was it scared the shit out of my brother and I. We were like 7 and 10, and we totally freaked out that night. It was definitely a memorable event. So fast forward a little while, and my parents want to get out of there, and we move into Beaverton, which is, a little further away. So I have to leave my school, start a whole new school. And I remember this apartment complex. everybody hated us. My brother and I were like these punk kids, you know. We were, quote, the troublemakers. We didn't really cause much trouble, but all the other neighbors thought that we were a bad influence on their kids. And I remember there was another firecracker incident. The older kids had stashed a bunch of firecrackers under the apartments next door, so I found them in this like crawl space area. I was like, "Oh yeah." You know, we were setting off firecrackers. This was around the time when I would take toilet paper and roll up tea in it and light it with a magnifying glass on my back porch to smoke because I thought it was cool. And we eventually actually got kicked out of that apartment complex because uh, well, I don't really know the complete reason. My mom was pissed about it. They basically had the neighbors had complained and got us evicted somehow. There were a lot of weird events that happened at that place, but I don't recall a lot of them. I do remember there was a sewer grate. Now this is gross as hell. There was a sewer grate in this apartment complex in the middle of the driveway that was on an incline there, so everything ran into it. And my brother and I would like take the grate off and reach down inside, and we'd pull out the toys that kids dropped and lost down there. We found all kinds of cool shit. But yeah, we reached our hands down inside there. Now, mind you, it's not a sewer, it's a drain. But man, it was disgusting. I can't believe we did that shit. Like, we did some pretty absurd stuff. So then another year passes, right? We live there for a year, we get kicked out. Then we move out to Hillsboro. Hillsboro is basically, some people call it Hill's Burrito. I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it is a very, the Mexican population there is extremely high compared to most of Oregon or anywhere else around here. And so I had these kids in my neighborhood who would pick on me and cuss at me in Spanish. And another issue where I guess I could have built up resentment, but I never did. I just figured their parents sucked and they were assholes for whatever reason. But they, this place was horrible. But they had these woods out in the back where we'd all go play, and we'd set traps, booby traps, and we'd go out and play fake guns, basically. And around that time, my parents weren't doing well, and they got divorced. And this was around the time when we all left that place. My mom and my brother moved out to Milwaukee, back to there, and my dad and I moved to a town called Lake Oswego, which is, for those who know, a yuppie town in Oregon, south of Portland, about 10 miles. And yeah, it's a very stuck up, snooty town. And even back then it was, but not quite as bad because they had what they called the second edition, which was basically affordable houses downtown. And we found, I remember who we rented from. It was Colleen Didson. I don't know how I remember that because I had nothing to do with the payments, but she was our landlord, and we rented that house, I think, for 425 bucks. It was outrageously cheap, even for back then in the early 90s. I mean, that was cheap. And everything was going along fine, except I went to a high school with a bunch of jocks and yuppies that basically acted like douchebags. And then I did my best, you know. I became a skater around that time. I was trying to feel out who I was, wearing skater clothes, listening to heavy metal, going to metal shows when I hit 15. Trying to figure out who I was as an individual. And then like right before freshman or sophomore year, my dad he had cancer, and it got exponentially worse, and it spread to his brain, and he basically died. You know, he was in the house in hospice care, and he died that year, like a week before school started in 92, I think. And I remember going to school the first day because I talked with my mom about it. I'm like, I'm not going to let this defeat me, you know. Yeah, losing your father is huge, but don't sit and dwell on it. I refused to play a victim. I refused to use that as an excuse to not get out and do the things I needed to do. And I wasn't a good student, so it wasn't about good grades. It was just about being busy, staying busy and feeling active. And, that's one of those things that I learned through all the hardships and problems I had in my childhood and growing up. And just push through and don't be a fucking wuss. You know, maybe looking back on, in retrospect, on why I even started making a podcast about my life, it would be maybe to just help myself reflect on some of the shit I've gone through and how I've dealt with it by realizing everyone has to deal with shit. And how I hear so many people these days whine about, you know, not getting a trigger warning before somebody talks about something controversial. I mean, I know that sounds petty, but it really just seems like we've become a very weak species. And it's not all of us, it's mostly just Americans, or a certain segment of Americans, who think that, when I have kids. Okay, I've got a kid who's 27, and he went through school and had to deal with his own shit. I've got two other kids who are uh, 10 and 13. My middle son is going into high school next year, and he's going to have to deal with all the idiots in high school. And he's a really smart kid, and he thinks for himself, and he's reasonable and rational, but he's very cynical because he has to deal with all the bullshit, and he knows it's bullshit. And that's how I always felt in school. It was a bunch of bullshit. It wasn't for me. I didn't like the learning atmosphere. I didn't like how the teachers taught. It didn't work for my needs. So moving on, that was up until I I said I moved to Lake Oswego. Well, I met my best friend Mike Barnum like the first week of seventh grade, and we were coming home on a school bus, and we were talking, and he's like, "Want to ride bikes?" I'm like, "Sure." So I rode my bike down to his house, and we were friends for years. We were like inseparable. And I haven't seen the guy, bless him, in years, but he stopped by a while back, and he's been doing his own thing. He's up in Seattle, and you have friends that come and go in your life, but like I said, today I traveled down to see our friend Doug. My friends Kevin and Scott that I traveled with, you know, um, I've known them since they were like 12 and 13, and I was like 15. It's crazy to think that I have friends I've known since I was just becoming a teenager, and it's awesome. It's a great thing. But it's weird. You never know who you're going to be friends with later. But they've been with me ever since that point where I got to Lake Oswego and I met all of them. And then the very next year, as I said, I went to my sophomore year after my father passed. And then by the end of the sophomore year, should say half the way into the sophomore year, they kicked me out of the high school. In retrospect, I was mourning, I'd lost my dad, but I didn't realize it was that much soon after they kicked me out. But I made a mistake. I loved making bongs. I made a spice bong out of a spice container with holes drilled through the lid and a little hookah. And I showed it to my friend just outside school grounds. There was a little smoking area. The year before that, my freshman year, you could smoke at the school. There was a smoking lounge at the school, and we all smoked in it. But that was the last year, like 92 or 91, where they banned that. And so the next year we had to smoke off campus. So I'm smoking cigarette, I'm showing my friend my bong, and this other girl who was in this drug treatment class that his parents wanted him to go to because he'd smoked pot once, and you know how parents are that don't understand weed. Yeah, they thought he needed treatment, and so she ratted me out, and then the school kicked me out. The principal called me in his office. He wanted to search all my stuff. I managed to stick it all in my armpit, and he didn't find it. But he did find the bong because they knew I had it. And they threatened to kick me out. My mom showed up, threw a fit, bitched it. Not at me. She bitched that guy out for fucking with me. And then we went home, and then they wanted me gone so bad, they offered to pay for me to go to a place called LEC, Lentz Education Center. It's way out in northeast Portland, on Gleason and like 50th or something. Horrible place. Bad location. And the school was small, and the teachers, there weren't very many. It was a very small area with maybe like 50 students. Every one of them wore starter jackets, and well, back then starter jackets were big, but they were all wannabe gangsters, young wannabe gangsters. But honestly, my brother and I both got sent to that school, even though my brother was 3 years younger than me and he was going to a different alternative school. I don't know how they managed to send us both to a school that was like 30 miles away, but every morning I'd have to get up walk down to the transit center, catch a bus, take it down to Portland, take another bus and transfer and go all the way out to Gleason. And it took me like an hour, hour and a half just to get to school every day. But you know what? I fucking did it. And I aced that school because there was no homework. Because it's not that I was dumb, I just didn't want to do homework. And that's why I wasn't doing well in math and everything else when I was in my freshman year. So I went through that school for the 1 year for my sophomore and my I think my sophomore year, and then I think my junior year as well. Part of my sophomore and then junior year. And towards the end of the year they said, "Hey, you're really artistic and there's a school that you might like and it's called MLC." And this is downtown Portland. And they said that they only accept a certain amount of people and you have to write basically an essay on why you want to go to the school. So I wrote an essay, and they said there was a waiting list, but they actually accepted me in. I was stoked. I went the next year, all year. It was an art-based school where everybody just kind of was respected for who they are. It's what a school should be. But the thing with schools, when they're too big, it doesn't matter how tolerant or accepting or, oriented you are towards the students. The schools are just too big and there's just too many people in them. But for my senior year, I ended up, doing really well, getting good grades again, no homework. And I thought that that was great. I still didn't graduate. I made it through my senior year, lacking about 6 or 7 credits, maybe it was less, and just didn't want to go back, didn't care. And then I started working at a gas station, pumping gas in Oregon, and partied a little bit, met some people, hung out, lived with some friends, moved back to my mom's for a while, lived with some friends again. We had a huge house on Hawthorne that we rented from my ex-girlfriend's dad. And it was a huge, like, Victorian style Hawthorne house. Like in Portland, it's, an old 1920s house, like right in the prime location where all the hippies lived. And we lived there for 1 month, held a huge party on Halloween. Somebody poured beer over my neighbor's head, turned into this crazy mess. Too many people coming and partying. I got sick for a while, had to stay at my mom's, came back, and there was people like basically living in my bedroom. Like there's this dude cutting up sheets of acid. It was just a wild experience. And then we got kicked out like 30 days later. And so back to my mom's for a while. And then I was working at the gas station. It was 1998. Right next door to the gas station I was working at, there was a restaurant called Banning's. And they had the best fucking omelets and breakfast food. And they were open like, I think, 24/7. I would go in there every morning at like 7 a.m. because I worked 6 to 2 and pick up some hash browns and eggs and French toast. And I noticed this girl behind the counter was always really nice to me, really sweet. She would write little notes like in the inside, like, stay dry, have a nice day, with a little smiley face. Now, me being the big dumb guy I am, didn't really pick up on the hints. Eventually, this woman asked me out, and we went out. I remember we went out on our first date on Christmas Eve, and kind of went shopping together and hung out for a while. And then we came back and we parked in the back of the restaurant and talked for a while. And she told me she had a kid. And I was like, whoa, that kind of surprised me. Like, here I am, party guy. I don't know if I really want to, have a relationship with somebody with a kid, but none of that really came to mind. It was just like, oh, okay, cool. I'd like to meet him. Fast forward to 2023 here. She's my wife. We've been together for a long time, I guess 98. So 25 years this year will be when we first took our first date. So this Christmas Eve will be exactly 25 years from our first date. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a happy man. I have a wonderful woman, and I helped her raise the son that she had when I met her. He's the one that's 27 now. He was 3 when I met him. And then we have 2 other kids, as I said, and it's a wonderful feeling and experience to have those people in my life. But I need to backtrack. That was around the time when I met her. That was 98. And at that time, I was living at my mom's condo in the storage space underneath. And we hung out for a while. She was living with her son at these other people's houses, renting a room. So we decided to move in together, and we got an apartment. And we got an apartment out on in Tualatin, and it was a small apartment. It was modest, but it worked for us, a little townhouse style. And I remember having some good times there, doing some early woodworking, trying to get my skills up with basic shitty hand tools. And she was working at Billigan's Roadhouse, which was down the street, and I was doing carpentry, and we were just living our life. And a couple of years later, we decided we were going to move into a better place, and we were looking and looking and looking, and we found a farmhouse on a place called Tualatin Sherwood Road. And mind you, this is like one of the last stretches, was one of the last stretches of farmland between Tualatin and Sherwood. A beautiful farmhouse on I don't know how many dozens of acres. They weren't ours. We were couldn't use them all, but the guy who owned the property, he'd send up a dude who would with his tractor plow up like 150-foot by like 50-foot plot for us to plant in, and we had these huge garden for a couple of years. The second year we planted the garden, we got a notice. They came up and said, "Oh, by the way, you're getting evicted because we're selling the land." It wasn't anything we did, but they were selling the land and going to develop it into a lazy boy furniture outlet or furniture warehouse, which is what it is now. It's pretty sad because I drove by it the other day, but that farmhouse was amazing. It had its own little creek and an abandoned farm building up there on the hill. You could walk all around through the woods back there, big old garden. And that period in our life was amazing. We had a huge New Year's party where it got pretty wild. I mean, when people are riding on the hood of a car with an AK-47 and doing, crazy shit like that, that was a little out of hand, but we had a good time. And when we got kicked out, we ended up having to live in a motel. And I had pet rats at that time. We lived in a motel with our son, with rats living in the bathroom, trying to keep them from chewing up the baseboards, which we ended up having to find out and match and replace these baseboards because our pet rats chewed some of them up. Um, and then her sister's friend had a house he was selling, and we tried to see if we could get approved. This was around 2003 or 2004. And we said, let's just do anything. And so we bought the house that I'm currently sitting in, or at least said we're going to buy it. We still owe basically the whole principal. I mean, we don't own it, but we bought this house for 135, I think, 135,000, and we moved in, and ever since have been a very happy, healthy family. And my life is completely enriched by that experience. But in the meantime, it's easy to remember things from your youth up to your teen years, but as you get older, you start to forget. See, we've taken a lot of camping trips. We've gone out to Glacier Park a couple times, down to, Yellowstone. We try to get out and travel, the Redwoods, Olympics. And it's like, if you don't reminisce and talk about your childhood and your memories, then you tend to forget them. And I think that that's why we all should discuss these things. Don't mind me for a moment. I'm going to take a little mental break here as the point I'm at and just flip through and read your comments because they're always fun to read for me. Keith, I love that. We set gasoline on a brush fire and we learned a lesson. Don't let your neighbor catch you. Oh, thank you. You reminded me. Also, when I was younger with the fireworks thing. So one time my friends and I were walking down the street towards 7-Eleven when we were like, I guess like 9 or 10. And we had those ground bloom flowers, the ones we all know what the ground bloom flower is. And we like to throw them in the air. And we walked past this burned down theater. You could actually go up and dig through it and find stuff because, everything, there was a bunch of shit left behind. The only thing on the property that was left was like 2 or 3 trees in the front of the property that didn't burn down. And so we just figured we'll just huck this ground bloom flower up into there for some reason, right on the main highway there. And the thing goes, and it flies in an arch and goes into the tree. And we're like, oh shit. So we just kept walking, went there to the store, came back, and then on the news, the whole tree was on fire. And oh my God, it was bad. We never got in trouble for it or anything. We were little pyros. My brother lit some grass on fire across the street. I started a fire in like a little manufactured home that was abandoned. Um, we had fires. We did fire stuff when we were kids. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go into detail on some of the worst things that we did. My friend's dad used to load his own ammunition. He was really into that. So let's just say we had access to a plethora of different supplies to make random things, and we made loud things that went boom, and had a lot of fun with it. We'd be written up in the paper and stuff as like crazy people setting off dynamite down at the bridge, and my buddy's like didn't realize what was actually going on. We're like 15, 16, you know. I remember one time back then, the cops busted us for drinking on the train bridge. So the next time we went, we would keep lookout for the cops. And I saw them coming, so I climbed down underneath, like 200 feet above the water, on this little tiny like beam, with like 1 inch by, angle iron, sitting there huddled, waiting for the cops to bust everybody. And I waited there for half an hour, and everybody left. I slowly climbed back up, and they were all gone. I looked around, and there was a bunch of beers, and there was a beer bong. I just grabbed it all and I took it home. Cops didn't take the beers. It was an interesting time back then when I was a kid. We had a train tunnel we would party in. And I could tell you a hilarious acid story. One time we took acid, went down to this party in the train tunnel, and older dudes would drive in pickups full of pallets into this tunnel. It was an unused train tunnel. Huge, though. And it was so curved that you couldn't see the center from either end. So, yeah, huge roaring fire, and all of a sudden somebody says, cops. And we see sirens and, lights and cops coming down the tunnel. My friends and I booked it to the end and climbed up around the top of the tunnel, and we were tripping hard. So we're kind of laughing, like, they'll never find us. We sat up on top of that tunnel for over an hour, looking down and waiting for the flashing reds and blues to subside. But they didn't. And at one point, I remember saying, there's probably no red and blue lights down there. We're probably just hallucinating it. And sure enough, we went back down, and they'd been gone for like a half hour or so. Acid can do some weird things to your brain. But man, remembering those good old times, just going a little too far, having a little too much fun. It's hard to deny that it was totally worth it. Like if I'd lived a totally sober youth and hadn't partied, I'd feel pretty lame. Because I love celebrating those times. They were great. But at the same time, I highly respect young people who can stay away from all these things, stay away from substances, to not make themselves have to party to have fun. But I can't deny that partying's fun. So, continue on through the comments. I got sidetracked there. Hey Pam, it's good to see you. Keith says, who was your role model, mentor, father figure when your dad passed away? It's a great question. I never had one. In fact, I still to this day don't have one. There are many men, young and old, that I do look up to, but I only look up to them in a certain capacity. Like, I love Alan Watts, but I also know he was, an alcoholic, and he was he was him. He was a human being. Like, I see everyone as a human being, and it's hard for me to see heroes because I know that underlying every hero is just a douchebag human, like myself as well. And that's why I always tell people, don't admire me if you do. And that sounds arrogant as fuck, but I know some people have been like, wow, you make these videos that really help people, and you must have an amazing life. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is just a part of me. This is all you see. It's just my interaction with the camera. I'm just like anybody else, scrolling on my phone, feeling weird, awkward, not feeling that day like my total self, walking out to my mess and saying, oh, I can't clean this up. It's just being human. So I see that in other people as well, and so I just have never been able to make any male role models. It's hard. Let's see, where was I? Yeah. Hey, thanks, Eric. Hey, Kevin. Kevin's on here. Nice. Kevin Casey, that's my bro that I just traveled with today to see Doug, as I was talking about. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Georgie says the trees were bigger when you were a kid and they don't look so big now. Yeah, that's great. Because I was thinking about that when I talked about my house that I grew up in till I was 9 on Oatfield Road. I was thinking the bathroom always seemed so huge to me. A huge bathtub, huge bathroom. I know if I went in there today, I'd be like, holy crap, this place is tiny, because I was a little kid when I lived there. And, maybe we should use that as kind of a standpoint, a metaphor for everything else in life. You remember your home a certain way because of your mental state and your size at the time. We remember the past so horribly. Even the things I've been telling you here about my life growing up, like my buddy Kevin, who I was just talking about, he lost his father. We were talking about this earlier. I said my dad died when I was 15. His dad died when he was 16. It was like a year later, or a couple of years later. But it's like, what are the chances? It's horrendous to lose somebody like that you love. And I feel like losing my dad really shaped my identity strongly because my dad was my hero in the sense he took me camping, hiking, taught me about life to an extent. I mean, I try to have conversations with my kids that are deep. It's really hard. And I feel like as a parent, a lot of dads want to wait until the kids are old enough to understand it. And then they say, well, when the time comes, we'll have that conversation. I urge people to not wait because that time might not come. It didn't come for me because my dad never was able to look me in the eye and say, hey son, this is what life's all about. I don't remember a conversation like that with him. And to be honest, it's really hard to have one because we don't know what the fuck life's about. See, my dad he was a poet, he was soft spoken, he was intelligent, he was broken though by Vietnam. Joined the army when my mom and him first met, went off to Vietnam. He was stationed at Cam Ranh Bay and probably was exposed to Agent Orange. Not to mention all the carcinogens and bullshit in the air when he grew up in Chicago and then moved out here. And when he got cancer, they said it was carcinoma. And apparently the doctor told my mom, and I didn't believe her when she told me this, but I can see it now. He said to make sure he doesn't quit smoking. And she at the time said, what are you talking about? She's like, well, the type of cancer he has, the carcinoma he has, was not caused by smoking. It was probably caused by, exposure to chemicals and irritants. Therefore, what you should do is not, just don't, if he doesn't quit smoking, his body won't go into shock because your body ultimately adapts to whatever you put into it. It's the same reason a person can drink alcohol, a crazy amount of alcohol, and still function if they're an alcoholic. But another person might have one shot and be tipsy and slurring their speech. As a pot smoker, I can attest to that. If you smoke every day, all day, you can smoke a hell of a lot and get basically nothing from it. So it's all about that tolerance and that level of tolerance. But yeah, weird stuff. Anyway, the point was that smoking's not that bad for him and that quitting might shock his system and make it worse. But, sounds like bullshit to me. Keith says, did your dad have any PTSD from Vietnam that you witnessed as a kid? No, not that I recall, but I have a collection of his poetry that he wrote, and I flip through it, and every time I read it, I learn something new about what his mental state was. My dad was a lot like me in that he wrote his poetry. Every morning he was writing stuff. He'd write notes and poetry, and I think a lot of it was probably lost. I don't know. But I think he did it to express himself. And it's the same way to me that I feel, because I've written a lot of poetry. I mean, I have hundreds of poems that I've written that I've never shared with anybody, that are sitting in stacks and folders. When I was in school, I took like a poetry class. I was always interested in it, and I tried and tried, and I wrote so many poems. Some of them are horrible, but that's how poetry goes. I was never a big songwriter, and I've always tried, but it's hard to get the words out that way. And that's why YouTube has always been a great outlet for me. It's like my way to express myself because I might not be good with words in other ways. But even now, I stumble over my words all the time. That's just, it goes with the territory when you're talking online. It's weird for me still to this day to make a YouTube video. I'm like, why would I do a live cast? Who the fuck wants to turn on and see my bullshit? And then I'm like, well, I'm going to be making a video talking about my life. Oh my God, that's even dumber. Who the hell's going to want to know about how I grew up and what went on? But like I said, it's not always just for y'all. It's for myself too. I'm kind of hungry. To be honest with you. I had the best eggs Benedict that I've ever had, like this morning at this little roadhouse out there in Eugene. Oh my God, it was so good. And then when I got back to my buddy's place, they have, they live on their own little small plot with a farm with some chickens and stuff, and they have eggs, and they're like, we've got more eggs than we can use. Do you want some eggs? I'm like, dude, I would love some, wild eggs. Or wild eggs, organic eggs. Let me just say there is a difference between store bought and home eggs, a huge difference. And I was so stoked. So she ended up giving me like two 18 packs. I think they're 18 packs. Yeah, it's like 36, eggs. And I was just so stoked to go home and make an omelet. But instead of making an omelet, I came out and had a couple beers, and I decided to make a video. And so I guess I better get in there and make my omelet pretty soon. I guess there's not a lot I can add to my life story. I mean, through the last several years, I would say the last 5 years have been a fucking blur for so many of us. No matter what experience you had as a child, COVID fucked everything up. Actually, take that back. The way COVID was handled fucked everything up. It's really difficult to get into that topic without getting frustrated with the way that our quote officials and experts handled this situation. But here we are, and we've seen the mental health toll that it took. Lockdown, shutting down businesses, and I feel like right now, like I said, all the experiences I've had in my life have led up to this point. I've been morphed and molded by my experiences in life. And I don't know if that's for better or worse. I almost feel like sometimes I've become more cynical. I remember times when I was younger where I was like, well, I was more outgoing or more excited about life. And now I feel like I'm losing that somehow. But then I think, no, did I really feel the way that I thought I felt? Because we tend to remember ourselves certain ways, and that's not always the truth. But I feel like I've reached a state of homeostasis right now, which is just that balance of being human and being content with who you are and where you are. And you don't want to break that once you have it. When you're young, you'll jump from place to place, mentality to mentality. But when you get older, all you want is that comfort. It's the same reason that I don't like to stay up all night when I'm out partying with friends or taking acid at an event. I always have to get my sleep, no matter what. Even if I go to bed at dawn or after sunrise, I need sleep. Even 3-4 hours, I don't care. I don't do the stay up all night thing, not because I can't, but because I know it'll fuck up my mentality the next day. Let's just say I'm very conscientious about how I treat my body. I don't take kratom after a certain time. I don't smoke weed before a certain time in the day. And I might break that rule here and there. It's not like I have an established set of boundaries that I have to follow. I only take this amount of kratom and I only consume this amount of weed. I mean, hell, I didn't even drink alcohol until 5 years ago at all. Like when I started this channel, I rarely ever drank. And in the last few years, let's just say I've really improved because I was basically a sloppy vodka lover for the last 2 years during COVID. And I know a lot of you noticed. I mean, a lot of my videos, I was, especially the live ones, you know. I'd be rambling, and the next day I'd feel stupid. Like, why do you even make a video drinking? And I realized how stupid it made me feel to even drink that amount. And so I quit. And like this New Year's, I just stopped buying alcohol in spirit form. I still like beer though. And that's okay. It's all about moderation. Like one of my buddies said today, he's like, well, I would think, don't you think that consuming a drug every day is an addiction? He was talking to my other friend who does drink too much sometimes. So love him to death. But he said, well, then I said, I don't necessarily think that that's the issue. I don't think that it's about whether you drink or smoke or, take any drug every day. It's a matter of when and how you consume it. So if you go out and you work 12-hour shifts and you come home and you have 2 beers and go to bed, I don't consider that a problem at all. But if you're drinking 2 beers at work, then 2 beers at lunch, and that can become a problem. I think it comes down to our consumption patterns. Let me just tell you, uh, speaking about all these other substances, I'm a stoner. I mean, I've been a stoner from day one. I started smoking weed. I was introduced to weed when I was a freshman in high school. And one of my friends gave me for my birthday, this girl, Alex, she gave me a little bit of this Mexi weed and told me to put it in a pop can, told me how to poke holes in it. I tried it, didn't really do much. And then I smoked with somebody else, and they're like, oh, you want to try real weed? And boy, let me just say, that was when a movie came out. The movie was called Nuns on the Run. And I watched that movie with my mom, and we just cracked up. It was hilarious, and it's a horrible movie. Don't get me wrong. I was just really stoned, and from then on, I was like in love. And this was like what, 1991 or 92, and I've been smoking weed ever since. Like I never stopped. My mom smoked pot, so what I'd do is wait for her to be in the shower, and I'd sneak into her room, and I'd open up her purse, and I'd grab a little film container. This is a film container for all you youngins out there who don't know. This is a special one with the glued on stone, and yeah, because this is like something from my youth. All the moms had film containers with the weed in them, and at least in our circles. And so you'd open it up, you'd take a little nugget out, then you'd fluff the rest of it up so nobody would notice it was gone. And you'd take that little nug and you'd hold on to that all day. Go to school, do everything you needed to do, come back, go to the park. Your friends would all meet up and you'd match a bowl. This is where two people would come with a bowl of weed, and you'd match your bowls the same size. You'd pack that bowl, and then you would pass it. I mean, this has totally changed. The whole cannabis culture has totally changed in this way. Like everybody smokes their own bowls now. It's because it's legal and it's lost that kind of like rarity, I guess. But my cannabis days were some of the most memorable days. And it's funny because I smoked cannabis for my whole life since I was 16. So yeah, 31, 32 years now. I only quit during that period for about a year and a half. That was when I was on probation. I was taking drug tests. So I got an idea what it was like to be a non-stoner, and I didn't like it. But I told myself back then I'll probably never quit smoking weed. And then one day I just gradually just lost interest in it. Even during the last couple of years, I found myself saying, okay, I don't smoke at work. I never smoke when I'm doing carpentry. I want to know my measurements. I like to be focused, laser focused on what I'm doing. Um, I might be more likely to have a beer than smoke a bowl because it might actually help me focus better. However, if you take one little toke and you can manage that, sometimes at lunch I'll do that and that'll help me to, focus on what I'm doing. But if you smoke too much pot, you just can't think. You can't get things done properly. I mean, stoners just don't realize how stupid they look when they're trying to do shit. And I know because I'm one of them, right? I know what it's like to be a stoner. So, yeah. But I still love weed. I still smoke it all the time. And I smoke it heavily, but not as heavily as I used to. I usually use a bong. I have my own little like cap with a little flower of life on it. Yeah, it works. Kind of want to take a toke. I haven't smoked since I got home, but I think I'll flip through the comments real quick here and catch up. Aaron, Adrian, good to see you. Says, what was your favorite movie growing up? I don't know. Growing up, I guess that would be like, that's hard to say. Depends on which age group or which age, but Maximum Overdrive was my favorite movie when I was a teenager, or, between 11 and 14, 15. Maximum Overdrive, 1987, Stephen King. Horrendous movie, but so good. It would be considered a B flick. Today it's got Emilio Estevez in it, and I don't know who else. I think it's Emilio Estevez. But it's about this comet passing Earth, and it makes all the trucks and electronics come alive. Electric knives start chopping at people. Shit that could never happen. It's just so preposterous, but as kids, we loved it. We watched it all the time. So Maximum Overdrive, definitely, definitely. Nah, Aaron just had an omelet. The Real Folk Blues, good to see you, my friend. Says, do you worry about offending people before you make videos? Because I've been making videos in your style, but I always delete them because I know how others will handle my thoughts. I do, and especially if I think about it too much, then I won't upload a video. I have erased hundreds of hours, I'm sure. All right, maybe not hundreds of hours, dozens of hours at least, of videos that I've made right off my phone because I just like, I don't want to talk about that. Why was I talking about that? Don't question yourself. I will tell you this. This is the only advice I can get. If you're making videos and you feel like you shouldn't because you don't want to offend people, that is the absolute best reason to upload it anyway. Every single time I've done that, and this has happened dozens of times, every time I upload a video anyway and just say, okay, I'm just going to do it anyway, I get an amazingly positive response and people thank me for it. Like, thank you. I've been wanting to talk about this. People are thinking what you're thinking, but they just aren't talking about it. And whatever it might be, I don't even know what your topic is, but I know exactly where you're coming from on that. Just do it. Just do it. And if people don't like it, you can delete it later, right? Eric says, I wish acid would have the same duration as mushrooms. Yeah, you and me both, dude. Acid lasts too long. But have you tried 2CB? That's a good one. Or try mescaline. That'll last all night. Good. I'm all caught up now. Y'all comments are great. I'm glad that you guys are able to post your thoughts and still not have like this crazy overwhelming amount of shit to answer. I can't imagine being one of those channels with like thousands of fucking commenters that are just like blah 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 over each other. Like, I can't even watch those. It's too much. But anyway, that's enough about my life. How about your life? No, really, if you want to share things on YouTube and you have thoughts that you want to share, I think if you're willing to expound on that, I'd love to discuss that. What do you mean by offending people? Because I feel the same way, and then I start breaking it down. What would be offensive? Now, I'll just put it this way, straight out. I made a video talking about trans people, right, and the trans situation. A year ago or something, okay? I would say it was actually a couple of years ago. Maybe even, might have been a few years ago. It was really before everything got blown out of proportion. And my question was about whether or not, it's rooted in childhood trauma, how much of it's truly a part of society, how much of it's manufactured by our own mentality, and how much of it might be genetic, how many people are actually buying into some sort of a belief system that if they can play a victim status, then they can get benefits from not being harassed by other people in society. It's crazy, the whole mentality. I mean, there are so many different types of people and so many different discussions to have. You could talk about racism, the fact that racism is actually not that bad. We were having this topic, with my friends earlier. We're like, what the hell are they talking about? We grew up in the 80s. There was different strokes on TV. You had, you know, several different people. Eddie Murphy doing Raw. You had stand-up comedians that could cuss the worst shit, you know? I mean, racism was going out the door already, but it feels like a whole new generation came up just thinking everything's racist. And I kind of understood where they were coming from for a while, but then it just got out of hand. Like, okay, yeah, there are some racists out there. Fucking get over it and get on with your life, because most of us aren't. But it gets to the point where people are accusing others of being judgmental or hateful. And I guess I'm going off on a tangent, because what you said there, you're afraid to upload a video because you don't want to offend people. That fucking bothers me, because I think we all need to share more with people, more of these topics. And maybe I'm mad at myself, because there are a lot of topics I want to talk with people about that I'm afraid to share things with too. You know, oh yes, there are differences between men and women. Oh my God, you know, you must be a sexist. Like, what the fuck is going on out there? And so, for the most part, I kind of bite my tongue on a lot of the topics, because especially if they're like cultural, social topics, which I think will blow over in time. I feel like society in general is having a major overreaction to oppressed groups. I guess that's how I would put it. A major overreaction to past oppressed groups, by assuming that those same groups in modern times are just as oppressed because their ancestors were, or because their friends were, or someone else, and everyone else is living vicariously in this constant battle of who's right and who's standing by each other and who's an ally and who's an enemy. And I'm just disgusted by it, because ultimately I see the problem not over here with a different color or a different gender. I see the problem in Washington. I see the problem in politics, where a third of my fucking income is going, where all of my tax money goes and they spend it on stupid shit. And people just can't focus on the right things. So, yes, upload your thoughts, damn it, and do it. Tell people how you feel. You have to. We all have to. I'm going to catch up here. Where was I? Yes, sorry, I rambled there, but yes, that's important to me. He says, I don't know how far I can push it before it's too much for people to handle. People are scared. If people are care about the things I say, well, that's different. People might not care. Dude, I've had my YouTube channel for 12 years, right? 4,500 videos, and I have only 22,500 subscribers. If I would talk about Trump every day, if I talked about politics every day, if I talked about religion or anti-religion, if I were to cater to a specific group, you know, then I would have that group on my side. But I would also have any group that's opposing to them as an enemy. So in other words, no matter what you talk about online, unless it's just Beanie Babies or something, you're going to have, you know, critics. You got to be able to handle the criticism and realize that if people criticize you in real life in person about the videos you make, that's one thing. But if people just want to text and type on their keyboard warriors, they're probably just jealous that you're brave enough to share your own thoughts. Because people don't have to agree. That's the idea. People don't agree with a lot of my thoughts. And it does suck sometimes, because you want to feel like you're on the right side of history and have the right ideas, but how do we know? You know? Complicated shit. You just gotta do what you do, right? It looks like I just lost half my viewers because of me going against the woke culture. No, I'm kidding. I really hate that word. Somebody talked about the wokeism. My buddy was saying that today. I'm like, I'm sick of that word. Like, look, originally it meant understanding that people have been oppressed in the past and that we need to move past it. I'm totally all for that. I just don't feel like it's what it used to be. I don't feel like any of the words, you know, it's semantics. All the words we use today, and everything is overblown. The whole woke bullshit, the way that people use that word, it means nothing anymore. Just like libtard or anything else, people accusing other people of believing certain things and feeling certain ways. You just can't buy into it. You've just got to be honest with the way you feel and speak your mind, and don't hide from people. Don't hide from your own ideas and other people, you know, the way they feel. Fuck other people. You know, you don't have to put up with their bullshit. You know, it's one of my favorite topics is I have a video actually called When to Tell People to Fuck Off. I uploaded it years ago, but every so often I get a comment. They're like, thank you for this. This is just what I needed. And all it is me just saying, don't let people push you around, you know? It's funny because when as I said, making 4,000 videos, I can just click a button on my channel, shows me my top videos. It's given me a huge revelation into what people are interested in. And some of it's about frankincense and myrrh. One of the videos, it was just about frankincense or something. Sure, one's about kratom, things like that. But the one particular thing was when to tell people to fuck off. The kind of video I thought would get buried because YouTube doesn't like cuss words, yada yada. But no, it gets promoted because people share it. And it's basically like a don't put up with people's bullshit, you know? I don't think that we should put up with other people's bullshit and their delusions and what they think is true. You know, it's hard because not just online. You meet people online, okay? And you're like, well, fuck that guy. He's an asshole. But if you meet somebody in person, it's harder to tell them to fuck off. You want to be able to interact with people, and you end up finding even if you disagree with the person and maybe you don't like who they are sometimes, they might be a great person to be around other times. And so we learn to compromise, right? I think being with people in person is much more rewarding because it helps us really understand who they are. So we get a false sense of security and a false sense that we can tell other people off online, but also that we think we know what they stand for. And it's not just strangers, it's family members. I'm sure all of you have at least one person in your family or extended friend group who takes everything personal if you don't agree with them. So say they share something and you say you don't like it, they instantly attack you instead of, oh, okay, we're different. This comes from an extreme sense of insecurity within the person. The idea that a person can't live and let live, you know, because that's really what it means. It's like, oh, you don't like that. Okay, cool. Why should I be affected by what other people like and don't like? In fact, I'm happier. If I share a band with somebody and they say, oh, nobody likes that band, and I love that band, I don't need their fucking approval. What it means to me is I get concert tickets cheaper because I can go to that show without a bunch of other people trying to get to it. It's kind of like if you don't like cilantro, then there's more for everyone else. I fucking hate cilantro. It's my fucking disgusting. Don't ever put it in my burrito or I will kick you in the shin. Yes, it tastes like soap and different strokes for different folks. It's the perfect example because we're all different. I know a lot of people in life who just don't understand that other people think differently than them. Most of these are a lot of most entitled acting people are these kind of people who never grew up, were never taught to live and let live and understand that people are different and think differently. If you're one of those people, I feel for you because it's got to be a miserable existence to, you know, try to win the approval of other people, but also a miserable existence to try to approve of all other people. Like, you don't have to care what's going on out there with other people's lives. It's extremely complicated. There's a Modest Mouse song called Other People's Lives, and it says, other people's lives seem more interesting because they ain't mine. And it just repeats that, and I love it. I mean, there's more to the song, but, you know, it's true. We see things from the outside and we think we understand them, and we don't know shit. We don't know shit. We do try. Oh, Hisham Czar. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that from both of you. And Eric as well. If you're learning things from me, let me just put it this way. Cross-check everything I say. Don't ever believe the things I say. But ultimately, we all know this. It's not about what you believe. It's about what beliefs work for you as a person. Even with all the evidence and facts we have about life these days, a lot of people just don't want to hear it or care. I think what it really comes down to is what works best for you in your circumstance. And if you live in the city, it's going to be different than if you live on a farm. But ultimately, we all share certain needs. Communication, connection, camaraderie. It's life's a lot simpler. It really is. Fuck, man. You know, there's so much I wish I could share with the young, especially the really young men of today. Of course, not knowing my audience, I have no idea how old anybody is. It doesn't matter. But there's just so much addiction to, when I was a kid, the problem was drug addiction. And now the big concern is like porn addiction, but it's more than that. It's like the Andrew Tate mentality where people think that they have to be alpha males and be tough. They think they have to be strong and, that they can't be weak or show any weakness. One of the hardest things for a man to do is to admit, I can't lift this, it's too heavy, it'll fuck my back up. And I've done it a lot in the last few years. Only after I suffered excruciating back pain for years, realizing that my own stubbornness was getting my ass kicked. Because I was choosing to get up and lift something that I was unable to lift. I'm 6'3" almost, 6'2.5", right? I'm pretty scrawny. I'm only like 160 pounds, 165. Um, I have a lot of muscle strength when it comes to actually helping lift things. I can carry fucking lumber and shit, but when it comes to awkward positions, I've learned to stop myself, get the proper tools, and do it right. That was one of the most valuable lessons I learned. Just getting the proper tools one time could save you like weeks of pain, right? I feel the same way about everything that I've learned since I was a kid about being a man, right? That it's not about what you can prove to others or how many chicks you can get with or how much money you have or how much you can flex. And that seems so obvious, but so many guys don't get that. They just want to drive a fucking Bentley or something. I don't get it. I don't understand how people think that things make them cool or money makes them cool. It's really just a shortcut to attract other people. It doesn't gain you anything. It doesn't make you a better person to have money or a car. Um, Ultimately, we need to work on our own skills of being human. And that's hard for people. It's hard for me. I'm trying too. Hell, I'm a dad. There's so many things I could do as a dad that I wish I would do, like, well, God, I could take this opportunity to go take my kids fishing or this or that, and you start to question like, well, but I need my own personal time. But do you? And you wrestle, with like, what does it mean to be a good human? What does it mean to be a good dad, a good husband, a good human being? And it's fucking difficult. It's really difficult. And I think that we're all navigating this together. And that's why it's good to have discussions about it. Talk about our lives, talk about our upbringing and the bullshit we've been through. So I got to go to the bathroom real quick. And I'll be back to finish this off. First, I'm going to load up my bong. As I said, it's good weed. I still can't believe that I can go down to the corner store and just buy a big bag of weed. When I first started my YouTube channel, I had a secondary channel called Carpo's Weed Cannabis and something like that. And I used to upload weed videos to it. And I'm thinking back, like, I wouldn't upload videos until I had a license to grow, which I had to get through going to a doctor and getting one of those medical permits. And this was before it was legal. But now it's been like, 10 years totally legal? And you can just go down to the corner store basically and buy weed. It's pretty crazy. I feel for the people who live in places like whatever, Mississippi, I don't know who doesn't, Idaho, some of these states who are just so fucking behind in the times. Like, Idaho's a perfect example. It's all about freedom, but we won't allow you to smoke an herb from the earth. Think about that for a minute. Anyway, gotta go pee. I'll be right back and then I'll finish this video. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any. Not that my opinion means shit, but I try. I had to get some batteries for my son's Oculus. He said that the controllers are running out of batteries. I buy these 40 packs at Costco. It's the way to go. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Oh, don't be texting me now. And we're cheapskates in the electronics department, so we got the Oculus for free, actually. It was given to my wife, but she's so kind that she paid the person for it anyway, because that's how my wife is. She'll tip the mailman. She's like that. I guess as a server, you can't blame her. She gets her money through tips, so she wants to pass on that favor. There is something to be said about giving it, you shall receive. You know, it's The Secret. I talked about that in the last live cast before I got cut off, and I was joking around about how ridiculous it was to believe all that bullshit. Manifesting your reality and thinking about what you want to be true and it'll happen, and, you know. Skrillus Crow, $2. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. And I just, I just can't buy into the bullshit. I have a hard time with bullshit. I have a hard time with putting up with bullshit. I have a hard time to listening to bullshit. I have a very short attention span when it comes to things that just don't. I don't know. See, now I'm getting off track. Completely losing my topic, but in my mind it makes sense. I'm sure all of you know how hard it is to get your thoughts together, to organize what you want to say. And, that's what makes it hard to be a human. Even when I'm hanging out with friends that I've known my whole life, you say something stupid. Or with your husband and wife, Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Even when you're with your wife, your husband, whoever it may be, you only know each other as well as you can know each other. You only can get inside each other's heads so much. And often you don't want to. Because there's a certain level of privacy and intimacy that comes with being a human. The internet can't take that away from us, right? Everybody who is growing up in this generation is being completely bombarded with bullshit constantly. There's no room to fucking breathe these days. It's exhausting. Anyway, before I go on, I'll just catch up on the comments here because I haven't read them. Mental alchemy, good stuff, my friend. Hello, HRC, young men of Babel. Hey, man, the young men make the old men. Thing is, we got to take care of each other, and especially, men have to take care of the young men, because a lot of people feel lost. A lot of young men feel lost, I guess. Papadocio. Eric says Papadocio in P-Town. I don't know. I saw him last year here. They play at the Star Theater, I think. And it was the only concert I've gone to where I walked in and they didn't even take my ticket. I went back and gave it to him because it was just so few people there. You just go up to the stage afterwards and talk to the band. They're really nice. Interesting. Anon says, have you ever felt a strong reluctance, or even, dare I say, a fear of listening to an opinion you strongly disagree with? And if so, how do you go about dealing with it? No. Um, Actually, no. I haven't. I know what you're saying. I think what you're, if I'm not mistaken, what you're asking is, have I ever had that feeling where somebody disagrees with something and their opinion seems more true than mine, and I don't want to admit to myself that what I think might be wrong? No, and I think that's a really great question. Huge, huge key question because it's hard to define exactly why. That's something that happens all the time to people. Uh, People hear somebody tell them that masks don't work. The data shows masks don't work. And the other person says, oh, hell, yes, they do because I wear them. Or, and that's just a very small example. Or the situation that happened with the vaccines. Anything. You could go into a million different topics about this. But really, it comes down to often bias, and people, it's not that people don't want to believe it, it's just that they think that the data must be bad and they don't have the time to look at it. But as far as hearing things that I really don't want to hear it because I might, if that's where you're coming from, I don't want to agree with it. um, I can see that being true if you're a religious person and somebody's telling you, by the way, here's some scientific data to disprove what you believe. Like, it's almost cringe to some people to like question their beliefs that they've had for a long time. Totally understandable. The reason why I've never really felt that way is because I don't have any beliefs. As far as like, this is absolutely true and there's no way I could be wrong. Except for one, which is, you ready for this? I think, therefore I exist, right? You know where I'm coming from with that. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't think anything's really worth taking personal. If I disagree with an opinion, I'm very vocal and I express how I feel, and I disagree with that shit. If I disagree with it. And sometimes I do agree. Just depends. Jesse says, accepting the realities of life gives me anxiety. Well, how about this? You're going to die one day. Now, I remind my viewers of that regularly, and it has to be a joke. It has to be humorous. We have to be able to laugh at things, and worrying about shit just doesn't change it. Therefore, exposure is the key. You're scared of spiders? Put a spider on yourself. It's really that simple. We have to be able to face the shit that we don't want to face, and then it doesn't become so difficult. Because usually things are scarier when we consider them than when they actually happen. That's my opinion, anyways. But the realities of life, if they give you anxiety, that really depends on whether you mean the reality of just life is complicated and confusing, or if it's the reality that you inhabit and your situation, your circumstance, that you, whether you've created it or not. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Having a baby was strongly encouraged. It's weird how society has changed. Yes, it is, my friend. And maybe that's for the better. You know, I don't think people should be having kids at 18 anyway. That's fucking ridiculous, to be honest. I don't think anybody should be having kids until they're in their mid to late 20s. And as a parent myself, I know because you haven't even developed your own brain yet at 18. When I raised my son, who's 27 now, when we were raising him, we did our best, right? But we didn't know the things we know now. To compare it, it's like having our first dog. We didn't know any better, or our first cat, or whatever, you know. Kids are very difficult to raise properly because properly doesn't have a definition. And having kids, you know, you don't have to admit that it's like not all it's cracked up to be, you know, that it can be difficult at times. In my opinion, the reward is worth the effort. I love my kids, you know, I really do. They're all unique in their own way. I mean, I've got, you know, the musician's son, then the outgoing, flamboyant type son, and then the gamer, totally isolated, you know, my teenager. He just games and codes, and that's his thing. And I don't know, especially having three boys, raising three boys, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on many different age groups, right? I got a teenager, and then a kid in his 20s, and then a kid who's, just turning 11 this year. And things were different when I was a kid. Definitely. Riding bikes. Like I said earlier, I met my friend in seventh grade. We rode bikes. But that's all we had. I mean, my dad bought an Atari when I was a kid. I remember playing Asteroids with him for hours one night. And that was pretty much the only cartridge we had. We didn't have any real games. We had another one called Jumpman Jr., where you could jump on alligator heads when the mouths were closed, jumping, and Pitfall, things like that. We had a ColecoVision, and then we had an Atari at one time. And I never really had any other consoles after that. And TV just had a few channels with basically shit on. So you come home on Saturday, you might watch some cartoons, or come home after work or at school, you might watch some cartoons. And then on Saturday, of course, they had Saturday morning cartoons. Eat your Fruit Loops, watch your cartoons, then go out and play because, Sally Jesse Raphael or fucking Maury Povich is on or whatever the hell. I remember laying late at night and watching Morton Downey Jr. If you've never seen that guy, you're missing out. Uh, yeah, when I was like, 13, 14, just seeing the ridiculous nature of television and what it really entailed. So even though the internet's really captivated everybody and everybody's scrolling on a bunch of bullshit they don't need to see, shame on all of us, there's also a different side of it where people really were staring at other shit in the past, whatever it might be. Reading a novel, watching cable. It's no different. It's all just mind garbage, and we all do it. Can you imagine what it would be like if there was really an EMP that took out the grid and nobody had electronics anymore? Where every electronic device tomorrow was wiped out somehow, right? And you were forced to interact with actual language and paper and pen. The generations we have upcoming don't seem to be able to spell and write properly. They rely way too much on, you know, spell, autocorrect. I'm not blaming and I'm not pointing fingers at the younger kids. I'm just saying, learn cursive, learn how to write, learn how to spell. When I left school, my handwriting was fucking horrendous, okay? After I got out of high school, my writing was still horrendous in high school. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I even wrote my own like tagging alphabet. I didn't even tag, but I started my own like crazy tag style alphabet because my friend and I would like write our own, names in tag style letters. And I also had a cursive alphabet and I would actually recite these. Sometimes I was high, but I would write these over and over as an adult, as like a 19, 20-year-old and practice writing. And I wrote a lot of poetry and songs, but I wanted to get better and get my hands stronger. And my handwriting became great. I stopped writing for a while. It started sucking again. But I have amazing handwriting when it comes. I don't mean like the the handwriting itself, but what was I going to say? Spelling skills. I can spell anything, but I misspell shit all the time on my channel. That's just how it is. I'm I'm chronically a misspeller on stuff. My wife says anyway. My wife said that I'm always misspelling. I think it's usually when I'm in a hurry and I make a title. Well, fucking thanks, Skrillus Crow. Much obliged, my friend. And so, I mean, what do you all think about an apocalypse? If the shit were to hit the fan, I mean, what do you think it would be? I, this is the kind of shit I'm obsessed with, or I was in the past. So to me, it would be a major solar event. We're heading into the solar maximum, which I believe peaks in 2025. The sun goes in 11-year cycles. And when the sunspots are active and there's a lot of activity on the sun, you can have a coronal mass ejection, which a CME, which it doesn't matter what the difference between a solar flare or a CME. They both create an electromagnetic pulse which can take the grid down pretty fucking quick. And usually, we'll see the flash, through our satellites, and we'll know it happened, but we'll know that there's an Earth-directed CME coming. But the solar storm might arrive a couple days later. Could be 12 hours, could be 2 days. But if you pay attention to the sun, you'll know when it's happening. I know a lot of people probably watch Ben Davidson or Suspicious Observer on YouTube. He got a little political for a while. I think he's slowly kind of like backing off a little bit. He got a little intense during the Trump era, so I kind of like roll my eyes. But his info is tight. I like to have it. And I watch the sun. And beyond that, y'all remember that balloon that was flying over America a couple of months ago? It was probably a couple of months ago by now. That balloon that flew over all that shit. I haven't followed up to see what was on it, what kind of data it collected. Don't care. All I saw was the pictures. I knew it was a satellite-like thing with solar panels that was probably collecting all types of, any type of electronic data that was being sent through the air, which isn't a big deal. It's something that could be collected anywhere. I mean, there's Chinese spies in the U.S. They don't need a balloon, but whatever. Let's just leave that all aside. Um, that whole shit was pretty funny. But my thought was this, and this was the point I wanted to make. If, by chance, that device that was on there wasn't collecting data, but was rather a disguised nuclear warhead, and that had been detonated over the East Coast before they shut it down, that would be enough to take out the East Coast grid, which could set it back 18 months to recover at minimum. And we're talking frying the whole grid over there. An EMP of that size, that's all it takes. There were studies done after World War II, I think, with atomic bombs in the atmosphere, and it took out a whole bunch of chips in their gear because they didn't realize that, if it was detonated in the atmosphere, those waves, I don't know if it's gamma or beta waves, but whatever, they are magnified somehow, and it's much worse detonated up there. So if that had detonated, it could have been a problem. And, the thing is, people are so close to warfare all the time that I wouldn't hold it past anybody to push a button one way or another. Doesn't mean I'm afraid of it. It means I'm saying be prepared and, be aware of that kind of shit. I think it's important. I really do. I have a family to take care of, so I have to know how to prepare. I've got some buckets of food, water, things like that, and a shitload of survival guides. Back when I was downloading torrent files, I sought out a bunch of like survival books, and I found this one. I think it was 430 or 230 plus survival guides and books. Downloaded the whole file. It was huge, and it's got how to make everything you can imagine. Then I transferred that to several different hard drives and SD cards, and then I put some of them in a Faraday cage or box that is protected from EMPs. That might sound extreme, but it's actually very smart to have at least one small ham radio and a couple of things like that put away in a place that won't have issues if there is a major electrical event. Because most people have no idea what the Carrington event even was. You should look up the Carrington event if you don't know what it was. That's just my opinion. Be aware. Be careful. Yep, Scroll says, been getting ready for this for 20 years and you'll be just fine. Nice. 4 meals freeze dried plus some other crap. Nice. I have like 3 5-gallon buckets full of like 130 meals in each one. It's packed down, freeze dried. Got them years ago, probably 8-10 years ago at this point. Probably be good for, I don't know, could be good for 10, 20 more. I've heard that that shit'll stay good. Like they're on my garage floor in the corner. They're always cool. Um, just keep shit, protected. But you could get into the topic of survival, and a lot of folks will get into ammo. Like when I was down with my bros, they loved going out and target practice. And I like guns, I like shooting, but I'm not really that big on it. As long as you need to practice. I won't deny that. You need to keep your shot up. But beyond that, I'm just not as into it as other people are. But I understand the need to have protection in case the shit hits the fan. If something were to happen tomorrow, anybody who talks shit about who needs to own a firearm, it's like, dude, when the zombies come, bro, you're going to want one. I'm telling you. And you might think that's a metaphor, and maybe it is, I guess. But the zombies are already here, you know. Once there's a loss of governmental power and response, shit can go crazy pretty quick. And there's nothing awesome about the shit hitting the fan, having nobody to protect you, and having some roving gang that you're scared of and having no protection. I'll tell you, it's night and day to be able to protect yourself. So be aware, I guess, because anything could happen. We People don't realize a breakdown of society can happen so fast. Just look at what's happened in other countries when their money was devalued or, there was a major disaster. It's fucked up. An earthquake happens, people help each other, but there's also a lot of looting. So, you know, guess people got to be aware of that shit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, abundance where you seek it. Amen to that. Amen to that. And I wanted to get a better understanding of socialism, says Anon. I don't consider myself an apologist for capitalism. I struggle to understand why people think socialism has to be the solution. Well, that's a great question, dude. Actually, I could help on that one because I had a video about socialism and my response to disagreeing with it. That I don't think it would ever work. All the comparisons that are made don't work. But then I saw a video a few days ago literally responding to that very thing, saying a lot of people say socialism wouldn't work, and they're idiots, basically, is what it was saying. And it was like, well, it could work, but we're always ignoring the fact that we already have it. We've got schools, we have a military, we have welfare, we have benefits for people who need it, we have programs that are paid into that help the people. That's what socialism is. You pay taxes, and that pays for, it's I don't think people realize it's a form of like socio, you know, what is it? I don't even fucking know. I hate labeling shit, but you know what I'm saying. We have capitalist tendencies, but we also have socialist programs to keep things somewhat fair. But there are people who abuse social programs. The reason why socialism wouldn't work is very simple. This is what I discovered and the conclusion I came to. Because you can't trust the government. And if you have actual socialism, that means there has to be a government entity that's given full power to be in control of how that money is distributed. I mean, sure, you could have alternative programs where people could, where it could be transparent, of course, and the public could have input, but then you have to figure what people can you trust, and it comes down to the same problems. There's always going to be some corrupt asshole. And I think capitalism keeps shit honest. The problem is crony capitalism, where businesses don't have a fair shot because the big companies, corporations are able to consolidate, then lobby Congress to pass laws to benefit them, to keep other people out. There's walls and trade barriers for other people making the same money. It's the same reason that we couldn't send ships in to, say, help people in Haiti when there was that quake. They ran out of fuel and nobody could run their generators. There was a fuel ship sitting half-mile offshore, but they weren't allowed to dock because of the Jones Act. Jones Act is a 100-year-old act that said you can't send a foreign ship from a U.S. port to a U.S. port. You can send a foreign ship from a U.S. port or from another port in China to a U.S. port, but not from U.S. to U.S. And it was supposed to be to keep things competitive for the shipping industry. But just like the trucking industry and the trains, uh, they dominate it. I mean, they basically tell Congress, this is the laws we want passed and the ones we want removed. And if you pay enough, you get what you want. It's sad, but it's true. We all know it's true. Huh. It's frustrating, but you can't stop it. It's the quote machine. And it's been going a lot longer than we have. So instead of fighting the system, learn to acclimate to it and make it work for you. You can be fighting for the rights of other people, but you've got to be able to play the system. You can't just scream outside a building and demand rights and demand freedom without actually taking initiative, right? To get the things that you actually want. And no, making YouTube videos may or may not count depending on if a big channel has a bunch of viewers, sure. But most of those channels don't talk up on topics that really matter. They don't give a shit about the small guy. You know, they're out to make their ad revenue and, the latest dollar in sponsorship. It's just, that's why people are disgusted by capitalism. It's not the fact of people being able to make money doing what they want. It's seeing how people change when they have money, how bad it can really get. It's pretty sad. I'll flip through the comments again here. If there are any more questions here. Wow, it's already been an hour and 40 minutes. That trips me out. Ha! Eric says, "You're so vain" by Carly Simon on shrooms. Nice. See, that makes me kind of jealous. But yeah, I want a shroom. It's been a while. I really need that. Chris says, "Criminals do not care about laws. They will have guns, legal or not." Yes, I really urge people to be able to protect themselves. And as I mentioned, if anything were to happen, then I don't believe in the Mad Max theory. I don't think that there's going to be chaos right away. Like I mentioned this the other day in a live cast. I was like, you see these movies where there's an apocalypse, and in 2 days there's already roadblocks with dudes with torn shirts, like raw, attacking people. Give me a fucking break. Most people would be doing their own thing and trying to figure their own shit out for at least the first few weeks. But yes, there would be roving bandits and shit. And if you can't protect yourself, imagine if tomorrow something happened that were so devastating. It could be a comet impact that just surprised comet impact, that put us into a nuclear winter or an actual nuclear war. But let's say you survive and you get to where you're going and you finally are able to get to a place where you're safe. You've got your family there and you've got a little bit of food and you feel protected. And then you realize you have absolutely no firearms or defense skills or anything. You don't know how to farm. You don't know how to garden. You've never skinned an animal. You've never caught a fish. Think of how many kids don't get to go fishing. And look, I'm guilty of this. I need to take my kids fishing. My oldest son lives on the Kalama River. He can go out anytime he wants, but my younger kids, I need to get them out there. But these things can save your fucking life in a major disaster, crisis. I do watch some kind of doomer type, prepper channels sometimes just to get an idea of what people are saying now. And it's always the same old shit. It's not, it's kind of like the carpentry videos that went downhill. It's not about this is what you can do to actually survive. It's like, if you buy this product through my affiliate link, oh, that'll help you survive. Just like, Alex Jones selling dick pills or anything else. But nobody's really authentic in the fact that the ultimate thing you need is wisdom, and to survive you should know a lot of different potential disasters. Like if the lights went out tomorrow and you looked out over the horizon, in the early morning, let's say you wake up one morning, it's 3 a.m. and you notice that your alarm clock's off and you kind of get up and it looks a little bright outside. let's say you live in Florida or somewhere south, right? Southern California. And you wake up and all your power's out. Then you look outside and you notice that all the power's out in the neighborhood, but also the whole city, it appears. And you can tell because when you look up to the sky, you can see all the stars for the first time. And on top of that, an aurora, a beautiful, huge aurora all the way across the sky. That would mean that there was an impact from a solar storm, that it took out the grid, or at least transformers, shorted out various cables. But also, the aurora is a result of that, hitting the atmosphere and the various gases and the interaction. And you would know, oh shit, the shit just hit the fan, because you were aware that, oh my God, that means there was a huge solar storm. And that also means we're probably not coming back from this. That would also lead you to realize I shouldn't just go back to bed, but rather go to the 24-hour store right now, fill up your cart with as many groceries as you can, regardless of what the people say that are there. Set your credit card on the counter and walk the fuck out of there. Because that might save your family. That might allow you to have enough food and water to survive a long-term disaster. Because let's just say living in a JIT society or a just-in-time society, there is not enough food for everyone. There's not enough food in the store for everyone in your neighborhood. They have enough food for like one day for the average shopping group. Most people don't shop every day. So if everyone rushes to the store, we've all seen what happens in even a 1-inch snowstorm. Or a hurricane might be coming, so they sell out of plywood and generators. Do you have a generator? Do you have gasoline? Do you have fuel in your tank in your car? These kinds of things can save your ass. I am just as guilty, because one thing I've been wanting to do for a long time is put this sounds stupid, but put a raft in my car, in my trunk. Because I try to keep warm clothes, emergency stuff in my car. Um, I work across the Glen Jackson Bridge, which crosses the Columbia River. It's the biggest river in the West. West of the Mississippi, it's the biggest river, and we live in a huge part of it, from Portland to Vancouver. So it's like a 4-mile bridge. And I go to work up Marine Drive and Interstate 84 up in Troutdale by the Gorge, in Oregon. And if there were to be a major earthquake, which we're overdue for in Oregon, then I wouldn't be able to get home, because the Glen Jackson Bridge would probably crumble. Not only that, but the fucking dam up there, if it was a big enough quake, it could rupture the, Bonneville Dam further up, which could flood out the whole gorge area. You just never know. And if that were to happen, how would I get home, right? So having a raft, my thought was like, well, if there was a major disaster and I couldn't get home, at least I could take a raft across the river. And it seems like overkill, but maybe sometimes it's about the safety in your mind. The idea that you could save yourself if something happened. I think that's crucial. There's a mentality to it. Something I've realized is that, peace of mind means more than anything. It's not about whether you can actually save your own ass. It's about whether you think you can save your own ass. You can have all the ammunition you want in the world, but that's not going to actually bail you out of the problem that you might be in. Yeah. If shit hits the fan, it hits the fan, right? Yeah. Clouds in my coffee. Nice. Microdosing shrooms. Is it placebo or the next Prozac? I don't know, because I actually don't microdose, but I do think that it's a total ripoff the way they're selling those things. Um, I believe in macro dosing, large doses of mushrooms, so I can actually get a full revelation effect. Then I don't need them for a long time. Like, I don't want to have to take them every day. So I take mushrooms maybe once a year, and then I get a full blown, like 3 to 5 fucking grams, and just really go all out. Um, Psychedelics to me are God, if you will. I believe that psychedelics resemble my experience with the divine. I've been in one time where I reached what I called the Godhead. It was this state of mind that was so at the peak of anything that I could ever begin to explain. So beyond any concepts that I could put into words. Um, I just said, "Oh my God!" I just saw the Godhead. Like, it was an amazing experience, and it also brought me to the realization that no matter how epic something is or how close you are to truth, it doesn't really matter. It's hard to explain, but like the day to day life, the mundane shit, is what it's really all about. It's not about it's not about the rewards. It's not about the dopamine rush. It's not about the freebies or things you get or buy or, earn. It's about the experiences we have. This is why when people say money doesn't buy happiness, a lot of people will say, yes, it does, because it can allow you to do the things you want. True. Therefore, it's the things that you do that buy happiness. That's the whole point. Money can get you to a point where you can finally afford the things that you want. And all of us would love to make enough money to just go on all the vacations we want. But at some point, if you're vacationing all the time, you'll get bored with it. People want to work also. They want to put in effort and accomplish something. They want to feel like they're participating in society, most people. And if they don't, then they should be inspired to, because everybody needs to put in a little effort to do something. Some people are musicians, some are, artists, some are carpenters, some are welders, some people are, poets. Everybody's got their thing, man. Everybody's got their thing. Got to embrace that shit. Respect it all. Even kings and castles had court jesters. They paid a guy to be an idiot. Think about that. Paid a guy to be an idiot. Everybody needs a little humor sometimes. Before I go, I think I'm gonna take a quick swig off my bong. But god damn. I feel like by the time I get into a live cast, it's time to go. I hate to leave. But I'm kind of hungry, and as I said earlier, for those of you who just joined, I really need to get some eggs, because I'm not going to repeat the whole story, of course. My buddy has brain cancer, and we went to visit him today, and they have chickens on their property, and his wife was like, well, we've got more eggs than we can use. And I thought, she's like, well, maybe she'll give us each like a half dozen or a dozen. No, they open up the fridge and it's like overloaded. They gave us, like, all three of us, like 36, like two 18 packs of like organic, eggs, different colors and whatnot. And I was thinking about, just how sad it is that we're so separate from our food now. And if you've never, I mean, there are people out there who have never had farm fresh eggs. And those, yes, they taste different. The same way that organic milk really does taste different from, just milk. Uh, there's a huge difference in quality products. And what we often say is, I can't afford that stuff, it's too expensive. Because it is more expensive to buy organic, buy farm fresh, but it shouldn't be. It should be the fucking standard for the way we do food, the way that we share things. It's really sad. Bums me out, because I want to be able to buy organic everything for my family and kids, but for like $7 a gallon for organic milk, that's tricky when your kids, use it for cereal. I know somebody's going to say, oh, don't drink milk, it's from cows, humans don't need milk. I don't care, I know all that, but it tastes good. And I like chocolate milk a lot. I've always liked chocolate milk. But I've actually cut way back. I only use it now for my coffee. But I'm learning I like oat milk too. So, Yeah. Hey, real folk. Thank you, my friend, for the $5. I appreciate that, my brother. Real folk's been a subscriber for a long time, and I appreciate you. Making your own capsules, says Adam. Yeah, I have a capsule machine. I have a 25 maker, but I also have one of the 100 capsule makers. I have like two of them. But because I was making my own capsules and I was selling them, they're actually, where are those things? I was going to share them again, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. I thought I had them. I have these really cool packages that I bought, and then I made these labels for them, and I sold these blends. I actually bought like a huge box of these pill bottles, and I started making these. This is like L-tyrosine. I don't know why I have that, but I was gonna sell kratom in those bottles on my website, and then I realized that they don't fit in the packages properly. The You have to like flex one of the priority, because I always ship priority mail when I was shipping out. And man, I feel kind of bad because I want to still sell kratom to people, but I just haven't ordered any, and it's too expensive to buy a bunch. And I don't really. I have a bunch left, but my website lapsed, and people were saying there's a issue with the the certificate, and therefore they were getting warnings on the website, and therefore I let it lapse because I didn't want to pay for a website that was giving people warnings. And I just gave up, and it's like I'm so confused with the whole internet world, doing business online. That's why I hate Etsy and selling shit. You've got to pay Etsy, you've got to pay PayPal if you're on eBay. Everybody wants their little cut of the money, and then you got to deal with shipping and packaging and the size of things. It's funny because that's not what I'm good at. I just like to talk. What if I could get paid to talk? Wouldn't that be great? Oh man, that'd be awesome. For me. I'm half joking with you. I don't think enough of my subscribers understand my sarcasm very well because it's kind of dry. And often I'll come across as serious when I say something, but it's not. It's almost like you guys are a little family. Like, for example, if some channels are doing a live cast like NASA, something like that, right? You're going to have a whole bunch of different types of people at different times. But anytime I do a live cast, I know I'm going to have my viewers on it. And I think that's fucking cool. Wow, it just said it had 31 people. That's a lot of people. I can't stick around for very long. But you guys might inspire me to stay. We'll see. Oh my god, this battery in this vape is horrible. It works. Anyway, um, I want to say congratulations to my wife because she started vaping and finally quit smoking. We both smoked for like 25 years. Her for like 30 because I've vaped for over 6 years. But I've been trying to get her to at least try it for a long time. And yes, I joked with my friend today. I was like, yeah, watch, in 5 years they'll find out vaping is worse than smoking. But all in all, my lungs feel better. And we've all got our little addictions, don't we? The things we do. Which, as this video, this podcast, this live cast rather, being about my life, and, I was thinking about my childhood. It's funny because you start to wonder how you got your habits. With this thing, I feel like I've always got it in my hand. But I never vape on videos because I'm focused on my video. I used to smoke in my videos too. It's so tacky. But I can't make a live cast for 2 hours without my vape, right? But when I was younger, I sucked my thumb. And I sucked my thumb till I was about, I want to say I was like 11 or something. Like I was old. Like most quit when they're like, but well before they're 10. No, dude, I sucked my thumb till I was like almost a teenager. It's pretty crazy. And I think back and I'm like, what kind of insecurities did I have about life to make me that way? And then I'm like, well, maybe that tells me something about my addictions today, and who I am. And I didn't have a traumatic childhood or anything, but we all have weird experiences and mental anguish that causes us problems. And I would imagine, like I said, my dad passing away didn't really help that. So I ended up being the person I am. And here I am. So, funny, I was just talking with somebody about how metabolism, drugs affect people differently, just like foods. And yeah, it's interesting. Different mentalities and types. I was saying I'll never get fat. I've got it. It's almost like a joke. I don't know if that's a joke. I feel like that's Kevin now. Because no, I was with my friends in the car all day. We drove down to our friend's house in Eugene. So we were in the car for like 4 hours together. And I was telling them all about how bad powdered creamer is and how bad it is for your poops. It'll make your poop really stinky. So if your poop is really stinky, don't get rid of the powdered creamer and it'll help. I guarantee. Do you ever do free kratom samples? Oh, I haven't in a long time. Eric, thanks, bro. I appreciate that, man. I don't know why it keeps cutting me off. Maybe I said something I shouldn't have said. Just trying to kill me. Jesse says George Carlin was good at bringing humor to a bad situation. Amen to that, my friend. Eric's like laughed my ass off at powdered creamer. Yeah, dude. Anyway, I know this by experience and other people as well. We had that discussion, especially those little creamers you might get at a restaurant, stuff like that. However, some people are lactose intolerant. Like if my youngest son eats like cheese or drinks milk, his farts stink like crazy. So you can't win them all. It's just being human. It's funny how sensitive people are about bodies and habits and you know diets, things like that. I mean, sometimes we have a reason to be a little like reluctant to talk about the shit if we have bad diets and stuff like that. But some people just have weird stuff. Like we have different metabolisms, we have different um, chemistry, the way we handle things. The bacteria in our gut and the way that our gut connects with our brain is a completely wild topic. But the vagus nerve and how we have a certain amount of bacteria in our gut. We have to eat a certain amount of greens and organic foods in order to like keep those bacteria replenished. And when those bacteria start to reproduce, then they demand more of, let's say, the food they like. So you eat a food with a certain bacteria on it. It's not something you really like that much, but it's something really healthy, for example. You eat it a few times, then that bacteria can stay in your gut for a while. The more of that food you eat, the more that bacteria can stay, and the more you might be able to change your diet. It sounds crazy, but you probably heard that we have more cells in our body that aren't our natural cells than are. In other words, you have more bacterial cells and other things like that than you do your own cells. That's true. It's a fact. Some people say it's like multiples more. I don't know what the actual number is. It doesn't matter. The point is that we have, trillions of different bacterial cells in our body that work symbiotically. Tell you this. It sounds weird, but everybody takes showers. So tell me this. If you've ever taken a shower and washed your armpits with soap, have you ever noticed, and this might just be me, but after you take a shower and wash your armpits and your whole body really well, that you start to sweat afterwards even more than usual and it's stinkier. Sounds weird, but it's true and it's happened to me so many times that I've realized that I had to do research on this and I found out that your armpits make several bacteria, but they also make counter bacteria that eat those bacteria. in order to keep the smell down. There's a reason for that. Genetically, as our ancestors, they didn't want to be stinky. They didn't want to be out on the plains and have the fucking lions smell them downwind. So they developed bacteria to eat those bacteria. When you wash your pits, you wash out all the bacteria, but the bad one can replenish faster. So I keep my arms down and I don't use soap. Sounds weird? I haven't used soap on my body in probably 3 years. I'm totally clean. I do use shampoo in my hair about once a month, twice a month, and that will run down my body and give me a little cleansing. If I get extremely filthy, I'll do a quick, brief wash off, but I really try to avoid it as much as possible. I would say maybe once a month I do like an actual soap cleansing, but I do take showers all the time. It's just soap is overrated. It'll actually strip your natural bacteria. Now, that's just the outside of your body. See, now I'm going off. Get to the inside of your body and think about the kind of shit that we eat and drink. Drinking alcohol, even. I mean, I'm doing bad to my body by consuming a lot of things I do. Eating junk food and sugar, drinking coffee. Um, we could do a lot better for ourselves, but, it's hard in our culture not to treat ourselves like shit because it's so easy. Boy, opening up a can of worms on that one. Kombucha, Jesse says. He says, yeah, that one guy. I'm not familiar with that. No, I haven't been able to. I have never actually had kombucha. I might like it. A duck egg, Eric asks. I don't know. I've never had duck eggs. I really haven't. Justin Hawkins rides again. Okay, I'll check that one out. Eric says his armpit situation is agrees. Real Folk Blues says, yeah, marketing ploy. Well, the truth is, I hate to say this, it's the same with toothpaste. It actually wasn't even a thing until they started marketing it and realizing you could sell this paste to put on your teeth and people would buy it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't brush your teeth. The truth is, really, it's about diet. Our teeth are usually fucked up by our diet. And if you eat too much sugar, yes, you should brush more. And flossing is probably way more important than brushing. If you floss and didn't brush, you'd probably be fine. All the cavities I've ever had were on my the insides, and believe me, I've had more cavities than any of you. I guarantee it. I probably got you all with tooth issues, and I can say that because on the bottom, I only had like 5 or 6 teeth left, and on the top, you see all these beautiful teeth. Those are all crowns. I had them done about 3 years ago. I made a YouTube video talking about it. Before that, I was missing a tooth and I couldn't even smile. So I'm always thinking, now that I've got this bridge there and crowns, eventually one day they're going to fall out and I'm going to look like a fucking idiot again. And I'll have to keep paying to get that repaired because I live in America and I can't afford any insurance to pay for my teeth. So, whatever. My dad lost all his teeth by the time he was like 25, pretty much. And he had like false teeth. It's not drugs. It's not the brushing issue. It's just genetics for some people. So we got a bad lot, bro. What do you do? Nothing you can do. I'm just flipping through the comments just so you know here. 8 months, huh? Great effort. No brushing, by the way. None of my own teeth left. I'm recommending not brushing, by the way. I have none of my own teeth left. Oh, that's funny shit. No, and yeah, Pam says she remembers that on YouTube about my teeth. Yeah, and the funny thing is I actually still have all the videos that I made. I made some high def videos. I showed actually close-ups of the inside of my teeth and my mouth before I went into the dentist, then after I came out, and wanted to do this whole documentary. My God, if I could get together with somebody who's like an editor, somebody who has a passion about editing or something someday, I'll be able to put all these videos, because I have like 2 or 3 terabytes of like videos that I've made, like out in the woods on trips. And I've like, how do I put this all together? I had an editing program I paid for every month, and then I forgot about it, and then it expired. And it's like, man, I wish I was as organized as some of these YouTubers who can like make these crazy awesome videos that get shared mass times. They can make enough to like make it worth it, you know. If I can make like, you know, 3 grand per video, shit, I'd be out there doing the craziest shit, spend all this time editing, you know. But you've got to work your way up to that, and I never was willing to like put in the effort. I'm honest, you know. I'm lazy in that way. What can I say? I'm motivated a lot of the time to do things, but it's never the right things that will make me a living or make me rich. But I don't want to be rich, and I get stuck in that kind of conundrum. I need to make enough to like buy the land I want and then have my dreams come true, right? And you're not going to do that through YouTube. That's not my intention, don't get me wrong. Uh, that's why I went from selling Kratom, even though I was making more money selling Kratom. I started building tiny homes now, and I've been doing that for a year. And I make less money as like a lead carpenter building tiny houses than I did selling Kratom. And I work twice as hard. But I feel more rewarded because I feel like I'm actually doing something for myself and for other people. People respect it and enjoy it. They come to see their houses. They fall in love with them. You know, we get to tow them out to their job site or their home site and take pictures of them in their in situ, in their natural environment. It's pretty badass. Yeah, it's fun. I met as I was saying, going out to visit my friend today, and his wife, her mom was there, and they're like, "Oh, you build tiny houses? I want to have one built." And I think lives in Cali, talking about buying one and moving up. And you know, people want a tiny home built. It's a cool thing to do. I got to stand up for a second. My legs are like, oh. Take a bong hit too. I'm sure YouTube would already make this like, you know, adults only, because that's just how it goes. It's probably how it should be. So I want to say before I go, I appreciate all of you for coming. I appreciate the time we had together, my friends. You know, I don't really know how to navigate my way through this world. I mean, like the rest of you, I'm doing my best. Trying to figure out what it means to be human. Trying not to be too serious or take myself too seriously. And by being able to express myself live, I feel like it kind of knocks down the barrier between me and my audience. And that's why at least once a week I want to do a live cast like this. I tried to do one on Thursday and it kept cutting off and disconnecting. I don't know why. Probably my new internet. Stupid. I signed up for that like 5G, you know, $35 a month Verizon. And I have like 2 days to decide if I want to keep it or not, or go back to Comcast. But I hate Comcast just as much as Verizon. Totally torn between two shitty companies. But anyway, uh, seems like it cuts off a little more when I'm doing a live cast, but doesn't really matter. Um, I do the live cast and it gives me more of a connection to my audience, was the point. And I've really got to go pee again, so I'm gonna probably have to go in a moment. It's already been 2 hours. I think it's time for bed. It's getting kind of late. Jesse says, I wish adults would have told me sugar was worse for your teeth than meth. Yeah, I did both. Just for a while, I didn't party too hard on the drugs, but I did eat a lot of sugar, and I ate a pound of M&Ms. I remember one night eating a whole pound of M&Ms by myself, watching movies, and then just going to bed. I didn't brush after any of that shit, and yeah, it fucked me up too. It really fucked me up. Eric says, love the carpo travel ones. Oh God, I got so many that I've never shared. Because I almost feel like, why do I want to share my travels with other people? Why would they want to see where I'm going? But people love them. But I have tons. Here's what happened. My GoPro took a crap months ago, and I've been depressed ever since. If you've got a GoPro 7 Black, please send it to me. I'll pay you for it. A good fair market price. I know. It just died. My wife got me one for Christmas. It was my favorite gift. I used it for like a year probably. So many GoPro videos everywhere I went. Carpentry, travel, and then it just stopped turning on. And I still have all the like parts for it and all the extra accessories. So I have to get that one, the GoPro Hero 7, because I have like 5 batteries. And I'm gonna find one. I'm gonna find one. A GoPro Hero 7 Black. If you've got one, I'll pay for it and you can send it to me. Yeah, thanks, Real Folk Blues. I appreciate that. Amy says, apparently we're supposed to get corporate jobs. Hey, man, that's up to the people. I didn't get one. Fuck that shit. I refuse to get a corporate job, but I've worked for corporations. I mean, in the past. I'm trying to decide whether I should just go pee and come back or actually just like end the live stream. Like I said, I need to eat I need to eat, so I think I should go. Amy says, I think you should pee and come back. Nah, I should, but I'm getting hungry and I know when I should eat. But I will pee and come back for 5 more minutes. If there are any final questions, you guys can you guys can reminisce with each other because you're all so fucking badass. You know, you're champions of the world. That's why you gotta buy the Supreme merch. You can use my affiliate links to buy weed. Okay, I'm gonna go pee. I'm gonna come back for 5 more minutes and then I'm gonna go eat. Okay? Be right back. Holy crap. My wife made chocolate chip cookies. Look at that. Yum. Mm. My apologies. I had to eat it while it was fresh. Mmm, so good. Well, I would imagine in 2 hours that cookies would be made. My teenage son has a friend over staying the night, which is probably the first time ever. He's a gamer dude. Like I said, he's kind of isolated. Could imagine it's hard to be a kid these days because school sucks. School sucked for me. Mm. All right, I'm done eating cookies now. I am. Mm. Mm. All right, where was I? Reading comments. The band The Darkness, huh? Yeah, it's good to be inspired creatively. I agree. Eric says, I'm wondering still, what does Carly Simon mean by closing her coffee? You know what I mean. Cracks me up. I can't always sense sarcasm, but when I do, they'll take keys. Man, I love cookies. I'm a sucker for cookies. It's a great question with Carly Simon. You're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. It's very ironic if you think about it, that song. But it makes me think about, I don't know, my own YouTube channel. Kind of the vanity of like sharing your own opinions online. And I'm sure most of you know what imposter syndrome is. It's where you don't believe that you're worthy of your own rewards. So even if somebody compliments you on something you've done well, you're still like, oh, well, it's kind of shit. That's kind of the imposter syndrome. Like, you're not worthy of that. But also, even the money you've made, people who are doing really well in their lives, who are successful, have imposter syndrome and think, well, I didn't earn this. I don't deserve this. It's a weird thing that, carries on into from poor to wealthy. Like, even if you're good at what you do and you get like a raise or something, it's a weird thing, but we've got to overcome that because we shouldn't be imposters. But it's weird when you post things online, uh, you feel like you're an imposter sometimes. Like sharing a random post live or even not live, but it's kind of like Twitter has always amazed me. The way that people can just post a random thought and attract a whole bunch of people. And like, that all agree with them, even though the comment is totally stupid or irrelevant. Like these followings of people who follow ideas, and yeah, we live in a weird time. Maybe we're all just guilty of following stupid shit. Imagine if there was an EMP and it took everything out. I guess we'd all just be kind of dealing with it, right? Be no more bacon cookies. Mm. But like I said, I can't be eating cookies. I need to make some eggs and omelets out of those new foods. So, Carol Kane, yes. So I'll be talking to you all next time. I'm going to go now. It's been 2.5 hours. I think I've done my duty. Saturday night. I have to go see my other friend tomorrow. I've been busy this weekend. Um, I was going to do another one on Sunday, but I don't think I will be. But I might. I might do a live cast tomorrow night. So keep an eye out if I do. And if not, then whatever. But Thanks for coming out. Thanks for listening. I'm going to save you guys at least one of these cookies. You can share it 15 ways, okay? Peace out.